This is the Tom Bigby Tales, and I'm your host, Shannon Evans. Tonight's episode is Cornell Franklin and the Faulkner Connection. This is a very mild and not really exciting uh, podcast tonight after the last one dealing with the depravity of humanity. I thought tonight's just a great old wife stealing story would be of interest. Cornell Sidney Franklin was born in 1892 to Mary Mamie Taylor Wyckoff and Cornell S. Franklin. Cornell's father died a year after his birth, and his mother would remarry to a traveling salesman, Hugh Swinton Hairston, and they would soon add William G. Hairston to their little family. By the 1900 census, Hugh disappears from their home circle, and Mamie is living with her two young sons in the former Maria and Gray Chandler home, now called the Chandler Beckett home, on 7th Street South. Maria was Mamie's sister, and the home was at this point, 1900, owned by Mamie and Maria's niece, Helen Garner. The house was filled with aunts, cousins, and the two young boys. Cornell would graduate from Franklin Academy in Columbus in 1909. He then attended the University of Mississippi at Oxford, where he graduated with a BA in 1913. He would complete his law degree in 1914. While at Ole Miss, Franklin met the local socialite Estelle Oldham from Oxford. She had recently broken off a relationship with William Faulkner, a match not approved by her parents, since he was just, quote, a writer. Franklin and Estelle began dating, and he proposed as a newly commissioned first lieutenant in the Judge Advocate General Corps of the U.S. Army. Cornell left for Hawaii and the Hawaiian territories betrothed and would come home to marry Estelle as a major. They married at her family's Presbyterian church in Oxford. The ceremony, however, was officiated by his family friend and the rector of St. Paul's Episcopal Church in Columbus, Reverend W.E. Dakin. Dakin, ironically enough, was the grandfather of Tennessee Williams, who was born in Columbus, a soon-to-be famous playwright. Franklin's best man at the wedding was his brother, Lieutenant William G. Hairston. After visits with family, the couple would sail for Hawaii and their new life in Honolulu, where her husband would practice law with the JAG Corps until 1917. From 1917 to 1918, he was a very young attorney general for the entire territory. In 1919, President Woodrow Wilson would make the 28-year-old Franklin the judge of the First Judicial Circuit of Hawaii, where he would remain until 1921, the youngest judge ever selected for such a post. In 1921, the young couple would then move to Shanghai, China, where Franklin practiced law in the U.S. Court of China, dealing with import-export laws. Estelle was home with two small children and homesick, and deeply, deeply missing her beloved Faulkner. By 1924, Estelle had had enough of life overseas, and she left Franklin, taking their small children, and would return to Oxford, Mississippi. Their divorce was complete by 1926, and she and Faulkner had picked up where they left off. She would marry her beloved Billy Faulkner in 1929. They would remain together through his alcoholism, affairs, and financial ups and downs until his death in 1962. She would die in 1972 and is buried next to her beloved Billy in Oxford, Mississippi. After Cornell Franklin's divorce to Estelle, he was elected a member of Shanghai Municipal Council in 1933. He had married the divorcee, Richmond, Virginia socialite Dallas Chesterman Lee in Shanghai in 1931. By 1937, he was made the chairman of the council the same year the Japanese invaded China, and he was able to get his family out just before 1942 when the Japanese had rounded up all Americans, Canadians, and Europeans stuck in China and put them in internment camps in Shanghai. In 1943, there was a prisoner exchange, and Franklin was repatriated to the United States and his family. From 1943 to 1945, he practiced law in New York City. At the end of the war, Franklin returned to Shanghai with his family to practice law and stayed even after the Chinese Communist Revolution until they were granted an exit visa by the Chinese government in 1951. He and his wife Dallas would settle then in Albemarle County, Virginia, near Charlottesville and the University of Virginia, where he would be a contributing professor. Cornell Sidney Franklin died in February of 1959 at his home in Virginia from a stroke. He was survived by his son Malcolm, who lived in Oxford, Mississippi, where he had been raised by his mother Estelle and William Faulkner. He was also survived by his son Cornell Jr., a student at the University of Virginia's law school, his daughter Victoria Felden, who lived in Caracas, Venezuela, and his stepdaughter Dallas Lee Clark of Orange, Connecticut, as well as by his 4 grandchildren. Cornell Franklin was buried at Friendship Cemetery in Columbus, Mississippi, in lot number 437. I want to thank you for coming on this little tour of Columbus, Mississippi, and Lowndes County along the Tombigbee River, and learning a little bit more about some of the citizens and some of the places in our town.